What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another week with us here at Curiosity Theory. I am your co-host, Justin Shaifer, also known as Mr. Fascinate, ready to get right into it with my main man.
Dr. Dakotah Tyler. Let's get into this really cool discovery made from some of the NASA clean rooms.
Yeah,
So,
I think this is
uh-huh.
fascinating. Yeah, are
Oh
you going
yeah,
to kick
yeah,
it off?
super, super interesting. Now, I was just saying, when you think about, getting rocks and things from other places, other planets, moons, comets, whatever, and you bring them back, and on Earth, there's something that you have to be really careful about, which is cross contamination. If I'm looking for life in other places, but I'm not really careful about, what bacteria gets on the ship with me, or is like on the astronauts or something like that, then we could accidentally put some life somewhere on some rocks, for example, wherever, bring them back, and then be like, oh shit, we found life. There's also like a danger of bringing something back that was there, right? And so you like really don't want this cross contamination. Either way, we don't want to get our stuff on that, and we don't want to get that stuff on us. So there are these like pretty intricate clean room technologies that have been developed to
Yeah.
prevent that from happening either
And,
way.
and, yeah, and quick shout out to one of my homegirls. If you all are really interested in doing a deeper dive, Dr. Mujige Cooper. She actually is referred to as a NASA planetary protection engineer, and she helps to work on engineering systems like these to be devoid of contaminants when they go to other planets or other celestial bodies. I think it's really really cool. But what were you gonna say?
Yeah. No, just that. So they found. Uh, let's see what did they actually find? Study publication. Oh, okay. So they found like a few examples of these extremophiles that
Mhm.
not only can survive really harsh conditions, but can basically seem dead, seem like they aren't living at all, and in that way they could like get by any sort of swabbing or anything that you would do to make sure that something was clean and that there was no life on it. um and
Yeah,
so
it's.
like
I
this
mean,
is an
it's.
issue.
Yeah, it's a testament to how resilient life can be under any conditions, right? Where we have
Mhm.
taken such a stringent approach to making something clinically sterile, like
Mhm.
the International Space Station, and there's still microbes that find a way to persist, create these niches, and I think they said they found 26 different species of microbes. I think that's what
Yeah,
it was.
yeah, they found, and the exact quote from the article in Nature is that the 20, exactly what you said, the 26 previously unknown bacteria quote, resist cleaning chemicals and cling to sterile surfaces by producing sticky films. So they can stick basically anywhere, and you can't kill them with cleaning chemicals, which is like pretty wild to think about, because usually we think about, when we think about creating superbugs,
Yeah,
like in hospitals, right? There are like these staph infections people get that you can only get in hospitals, because they aren't anywhere else. And that's kind of weird. You're like, well, why is it happening in a hospital, which is the cleanest place? And it's like that. The protocols of keeping everything so clean and sterile will create an evolutionary pressure for bacteria
correct.
to resist that. And so this bacteria resists any sort of antibiotics that we could create. And so you create like this super bug, like evil villain, jacked up steroid infection that literally can't be cured. Like there's not, there's like no way to cure it. And in
Yeah,
that
and on
sense,
a
I think it
positive
makes
note,
sense. But
yeah.
uh these presumably these bacteria have not undergone that evolutionary pressure of like being doused with antibiotics every day.
Right, but different evolutionary pressures of radiation in space, right? They showcase an ability, at least according to the article, to survive the harmful radiation in space. They, have these unique abilities to stick to surfaces, like you said, go into these, I guess, like chrysalis-like states where they are able to be undetected by our current
But what's
tools.
the
But
evolutionary pressure? And evolutionary pressure is something you have to evolve so you don't die, or
well, in
rather
my mind,
something that,
it's
huh?
yeah. I mean, in my mind, I think it's these are in theory, right? The successors of bacteria that have been brought aboard by whether that's like humans, um, other maintenance equipment that's been brought into the space station, right? But these are the survivors that have survived the radiation of space.
Mhm.
I would say they survived, yeah, like the wiping or whatever kind of cleaning process that they're using. They've been able to produce this sticky surface to survive that. But probably a lot of the other species that were abundant weren't able to survive those things. And that these kind of, I'd say like these are a version of superbugs. They're just not so harmful for us, at least as far as I know. But maybe this is the way that we can cultivate bacteria that can survive in other planets, is by kind of slowly exposing them to increasingly stringent evolutionary pressures. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if they're saying they found bacteria that are resilient. I don't think that they're saying that they think that these evolved because we were going to space and taking them like back and forth. So I don't
Right.
think that this is a it's kind of hard to tell from this article, but I don't and they just discovered these. So I don't even think that
Right.
you could say that. Um
Right. Yeah. Like it wouldn't be fair to say that they actively evolved, but
right, right.
perhaps these microbes remained after all of the processes that
Yeah,
were,
yeah. Which would
yeah,
yeah, like, which would suggest that there was already some, like, genetic diversity that would allow for that to be the case, but I think that we've seen this, like, sort of time and time again. I mean, we find these extremophiles underground that can sort of, go dormant for years, for like thousands or maybe even millions of years, until the circumstances are right that they can, come back to life and then continue on with their life cycle. And so, yeah, I guess there's so many examples for which that would be helpful. And I think it
yeah,
also kind of speaks to why a simple microbial life in the big picture is just a way better route in an evolutionary sense. Cause it's like, if your thing is very simple and you can go into a dormant state for a million years until the environment changes, that's like way better than being a giant ass brontosaurus or a T-Rex that needs to eat like an elephant worth of meat every single day or you
yeah. It
die.
has very minor temperature fluctuations that they're sensitive to.
Can't get too
I
hot,
mean, but
can't get too cold.
yeah, I mean, this is such an interesting thing though, because I think, when we think of what we define an extremophile as, which is,
Mhm.
in my mind, a bacteria that's known to be able to survive in extreme conditions, it sounds like maybe there's extremophiles all around us in theory, right? Like, let's say these are everyday household. I mean, we don't know this based on what we read. But let's say that these are everyday household bacteria that are on our skin, around our bodies, that we brought up into space and they're able to just survive. They're able to go into these extreme conditions and have this survivability. Like, what extremophiles still exist around us today that we just haven't put the right pressures on,
Being an extremophile is a very specific skill set that's like very useful, but are the type of bacteria that exist like on our skin, for example. I would not think, if I had to guess, I don't know a lot about the specifics there, but if I had to guess, I would say that that would probably not be a great energetic use of their for them if they are like living around people, where almost you want the opposite, right? You almost don't want to be as hardy and want to be like very dynamic and like quick moving, which these are like the opposite things that I'm thinking of like something that it needs to preserve itself over long time periods and deal with like extreme fluctuations. Almost seems like that would not, like, if you freeze the bacteria on our skin, probably just dies. Or you know what I mean? Or if it gets too hot, like when you get
Yeah.
sick, that's why your body gets warm, right? Because if it just goes, just tries to
Mm.
smoke it out, basically.
Yeah.
Whereas you
Yeah.
imagine like an extremophile that could live in a volcano, if your body got warm for that, it like that would be, you know what I'm saying? Like that's like a
Yeah.
just a hot tub for it.
So that's an interesting argument. The fever response, right, where we raise our body temperatures in response to, an infection.
Mm,
That's protecting us from internal infections, right? That I
yeah.
think rely on our body to be, was it 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit with very minimal fluctuations. The bacteria that live on our skin, however, I think would in theory be able to survive a lot broader range in temperature conditions. Like for example, if you walk outside in the wintertime and it's 20 degrees outside, they could theoretically survive that, and they could survive, you doing a rigorous exercise, and your body temperature starts getting hotter. I don't know.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. That makes sense. But the the fever thing is that the temperatures that are reached are because they kill the bacteria. The same, E. coli can probably live on your skin, but if it gets in your body, that's when it does damage. And if your body gets hot enough, it'll die.
Hmm.
So I think it's that. Oh, yeah, there's a maximum. So yeah, there's like the minimum temperature is probably can get quite low that they can survive. I guess probably above freezing, right? But the maximum temperature can't, right? Like
Mm.
there's like
Right.
a maximum temperature that a lot of these things can't survive, which is why I think
Interesting.
it's so helpful for us to evolve this, and including ourselves, right? Because we like when you get a fever, you start wrecking your own body as well.
Right. I mean, and I guess if you think about what we do for our diet, right, cooking is literally raising the temperature of food to protect us from those contaminants
Yeah.
by doing what we learned in biology was denaturing the proteins, right? Kind of like
Mm.
instead of the complex folds and structures, like the heat would kind of make them more simple over time as
Mm.
they're exposed to more of it. But I guess in the case of extremophiles, it's much more difficult to achieve that, at least the ones that can survive at high temperatures.
Oh yeah, like if it's like some shit that can some shit that can live in a volcano or something, like you're not cooking your food that hot. Another thing that's always grossed me out when I kind of realized it is that we cook our food to a certain temperature because it'll kill whatever, kill any bacteria. Uh, if there was like parasites or anything, you could. That's why you want to eat raw pork because it probably has parasites. If you cook
Mhm.
it, you kill the parasites, and then you just eat the dead
Eating the
parasites,
dead parasites, yeah.
which which is like in my mind is like just as gross as it's a little bit less gross, but damn near still there is eating the alive parasites. One of my
I
deep
mean, yeah, I mean, eating an alive snail or an alive squid seems pretty disgusting too. But I guess eating a dead squid feels a little less gross.
You ever had escargot?
I think one time I've had escargot.
You
Yeah.
didn't like it?
Nah, I don't really. It wasn't really my thing.
Oh, it's good. It's really good. It looks weird because they're like these little black snails, but
Yeah.
it's delicious actually. And I bet it's like one of the most protein packed meats that you got. It's sort of like eating grubs, man. You ever see those big ass grubs in like tropical
Yeah.
places and
Oh
people they
yeah.
make a salad and fry them up? It's got
Yeah.
to be so healthy. It's got to be so healthy for you. It's just like pure protein, right? This is
Yeah,
like
just
the
like those
juice
dead
that
parasites. Yeah, juicy dead parasites.
one of my deepest irrational fears has always been like having a tapeworm grow inside my intestines and
I don't
being
know if
able to
that's
like
irrational. I don't know if that's an irrational fear.
I feel like it
that
is.
that makes
I feel like
that
I
makes
have no
rational. That
reason
makes
to
logical sense.
I don't know anybody it's ever happened to. I've never like seen it or heard it ever happening to anybody.
Yeah, I feel like well, I don't know anyone personally, but like I feel like I've seen those videos where the people like sit on a thing of meat, like sit on a piece of beef or something, and then the tapeworm will crawl out of them from their butt. You haven't seen it? Yeah, you probably don't want to see that. That would probably make your fear even more real for you.
Sit on a piece of meat? What type of
Yeah,
shit
because
are
they'll
you
go,
into,
they'll
man?
like
What are you
sniff it
talking
and
about?
they'll
Somebody
sniff it.
butt naked sitting on a thing of
Yes,
meat?
like if you have a parasite,
Nah, bro.
it's a,
You on the part of the web
let
that
me
I don't really be
let
on
me
too
fact
much,
check
I
this.
guess.
Hold on. So, sit on meat to remove gut parasites.
You in it? You
Um,
still in your two girls, one cup era, I guess, man. I don't even look shit like
oh
that up.
dang, maybe this is actually cap. Hold
Yeah.
on.
Bro said sit on
Dude, I feel like I saw a video of this or something.
Nah, bro, you're sick. You're a sick man. Another cool thing about these bacteria that they found is that they are saying that, it's like from a an optimistic sense, how can we use whatever genes lead to the hardiness of these bacteria for the good, for people or whatever. And
Hmm.
they may be able to, it's like it's kind of hard to tell because it's like you got to figure first, you got to figure out what genes do what, and then you got to kind of try to figure out how you can um like transfer that to something else, whether that's like food or other animals. And but that it could lead to biotechnologies that help with food preservation and medicine. And that's really interesting. I don't have the study pulled up here, but I recently saw a study that some of the main preservatives that we use in, things that you find at a grocery store, cereals, canned foods, etc., have been shown to be carcinogens, which we didn't know
Hmm.
before. And I guess that's probably not much of a surprise. I think we've known for a while, it's been well demonstrated that these highly processed foods are not good for you. And that I guess processing means a lot, but a part of that is like adapting it so that it'll last longer on shelves, which is one of those things that it's easy to be like, well, shit, man, we shouldn't be putting weird stuff in our food. But at the same time, it's like, we have this problem of needing to preserve food, right?
Right.
Like we all can't just eat all the bread in 7 days before it gets moldy. That's not, the society's too big, right? There's like too
Right.
many things that have to happen. And that goes for a lot of food, right? Like I got some canned food that I have had, like in my pantry for a year or something. And
Yeah.
the idea that you just have to every day basically get the food and eat it within a couple days is just not really conducive to the society and lives that we live.
I think on the surface, I agree with that point. One of the things that I guess we haven't shared yet officially on the show is that I've been out here doing a little writing retreat in Barcelona in Spain for the past couple of weeks, and
Mm.
I my gut health has been phenomenal. I feel like we've been saying this offline for a while, but
Yeah, you be
yeah,
every time I see you, bro, it's like you're trying to sell me on some
I
mid-level
just
marketing scheme.
yeah,
Hey man,
it
you
really
gotta come
feels
out
like it.
here. My gut health has been crazy.
But I just feel like I don't know, ever since I turned like 27, 28, I feel like I had this bad stomach virus, and then since then, I feel like my gut health has never quite been what it was before then, and
Mm,
living in the US.
yeah.
And 2 weeks into being out here in Europe, I'm noticing a substantial difference. I think everyone kind of hears that anecdotally from time to time, like, "Oh, Europe just has much better. They don't process. They don't put as many chemicals." Right? You hear those kind of things, and you're like, "Okay, well, what does that actually mean?" And so I
Yeah.
started doing research on some of the differences between how food is processed and even how food
Oh,
is
yeah?
preserved here
Mhm,
in Europe versus the U.S. One, there's not just one single Food and Drug Administration. There's like multiple. But
mhm.
two, what's also really interesting is that their approach is kind of much more strict and has to go through a series of approvals, whereas in the US their approach to food handling is it's not bad until something bad happens as a result, right? So there's all kinds of like gray area there of like, man, I just
Yeah,
have this like inflammation, for example, due to
yeah,
a lot of the preservatives that we use that is uncomfortable and unpleasant in the US, but it's not killing anybody necessarily.
yeah,
However, the average lifespan in Europe is about 3 years longer than the average lifespan in the US. I'm not
yeah,
saying that's directly attributed to just simply gut health, but they have a different perspective on preservation, shelf life. They don't care as much about pretty vegetables and fruits as we do in the US. They're much more focused on taste. And yeah, the things actually have a shorter shelf life here because most people in the EU will just go to a grocery store and cook the food the same day. Like that's actually a very culturally common thing to do out here. So
makes sense. I mean,
yeah,
that is a natural, or it's closer to a natural way of finding energy and eating it. That's what our ancestors were doing. I guess you can see
yeah,
something that sticks out to me as you're describing that is how here in the US we clearly are um over leveraging the potential for capitalist gain, right? And
Yeah.
so it's like it's not always that. This is one of the things that this is about to happen. I'm about to get distracted again. This is one of the things that I feel like this is how I feel about conspiracy theories. A lot of times, sometimes there's, some totally weird shit that conspired behind closed doors, but oftentimes it's not necessarily that there's a room of evil people making a bad thing happen. It's that you have an entire system that just encourages certain behavior, and the overall outcomes tend to be negative, but it's not necessarily nefarious, right? It's like if you think about having an FDA, and the EU has an equivalent, or maybe they have a couple equivalents. Well, in a country where you really just care about maximizing profit, making more money, you may have only one FDA, and there may be some industries that it doesn't even touch, like health supplements. So people can sell health supplements. This is like a multi-billion-dollar industry that's not regulated
Hmm.
at all. I could go buy some shit from GNC and have no idea what's in there and die because there was like it was like mixed in a vat where there was peanuts at one point or something, and there's just like no testing there. And you could also imagine that, well, a policy that they may adopt is that if it's not very clearly horrible for you in the immediate term, then we'll just wait until evidence mounts that it's bad for you. Whereas if you're in a country where there isn't quite such a strong selection pressure towards capitalist gains, maybe they take a different approach and they say, well,
Yeah.
no, it's not just that we're going to wait until evidence mounts that this shit is horrible for you. You're actually going to have to demonstrate over a 5 or 10 year period that it's not bad for you. And when we're convinced of that, then you can move. And so like a lot less people would make money. There wouldn't be the opportunity to quickly like sort of cash in on like some new
Offend.
trend or
Yeah.
something like that. And then as we step back and look at two societies, you look at one side and you're like, oh, well, they're just trying to screw everybody over for money here in the US. And then over here in Europe, they like care about health more. But it's like not that simple. I think it's just
Yeah.
the way that we run our society, the morals that we have, the things that we are told to value, however you want to look at it. In the US, it just always is going to favor making money. And that's not, it's not like a board of directors that are evil that are making that happen. It's sort of like all of us on a day to day basis, even the
Yeah.
consumers, right? It's like we vote in a sense with our dollars, and we choose to pay for these certain things. If everybody, what you just said, if everybody adopted the mindset that we were going to go to the store and buy fresh shit and cook it that day, then there would actually not be the need to have these things that can be preserved for super long times, because nobody
Right.
would buy them, right? And they would just start mounting and stacking and stacking, and like the price would plummet. But we don't
Yeah.
do that. We don't
Yeah, and
that
I
that
mean, yeah, and I think it's hard as an individual. I mean, when you think about different circumstances, right? Well, one, the fresh and healthy food that doesn't have the preservatives in the EU is not that expensive. It's like a lot of times you think you have to go to a place like Whole Foods to get things that maybe have less of the preservatives in them, and they have all this marketing language and nice packaging, and you're paying buku bread to actually make that real. But like, let's say you're like you have a family, or even like a medium to lower medium income household in the U.S. Like you're going grocery shopping and you just want the cheapest fruit, and so
yeah.
that's the one that's packed with all the preservatives. It can last for 2 weeks, because that's another thing that we have to consider as well. We can't just be like everyone can't just say, all right, I'm just going to buy the $15 banana,
Yeah.
in protest,
The
right?
I I I don't know if that's true anymore though. I don't think recently, when I went to the store, I don't remember being blown away by the price of fresh food. Like I think that there's this meme that everybody sort of says, where it's like, well, we can't afford to buy healthy food. And it's definitely true that you could go to somewhere like Erewhon, and for anybody who's not ever been to LA or wherever else they have Erewhon, it's like it's like the $30 smoothie place where it's like everything is like supposedly fresh, and but everything is like way overpriced. But you go to Trader Joe's and get fresh food, and
I
it's not
agree.
priced that
And
high.
the reason actually, so I actually have looked into Trader Joe's a lot as well. The reason that they do that is because most of their stuff is devoid of third-party packaging and labeling. So a lot of grocery stores like Whole Foods or even more traditional grocery stores have these other brands come in and they're
You're
packaging their goods and they're
you're
slapping
paying for the
a
brand.
premium. Yeah,
Yeah.
and so Trader Joe's, if you go into Trader Joe's, pretty much everything's Trader Joe's branded,
Yeah,
and so it
it's all
doesn't have all
Temu.
the
It's all yeah.
right. So they don't use like a
Triple X.
so a lot of the money that they would usually have to spend on marketing just to pump, attention in front of people to come to Trader Joe's, they actually spend that they allocate those resources differently at Trader
Yeah.
Joe's, and that's why they're able to have these cost savings for the customer, even though it's
Mm.
kind of like a best kept secret. Actually, I feel like millennials, I feel like we're all kind of up on Trader Joe's because it was like a more common
Hey,
thing,
that's where it's at.
but
Trader Joe's is where it's at. The point is that that makes sense to me. That you feel better eating different food somewhere else. It seems like overall, generally, I mean, we're not a healthy country. We are not a healthy country, even though we by far pay the most for healthcare than like anywhere on earth.
yeah,
We are not
well,
a
that
healthy country.
that also makes sense. I mean, when you again when you have unhealthy people, you have a revolving door of customers. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, 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 man. It's very sad, I guess. Uh, but some things that you can do to stay healthy are trying to eat when you can, a diverse diet, whole foods, staying physically active. I found in my research for how to try and secure the best long-term brain health and neurological functioning, especially as you age. There's really there's two things that really stick out to me that seem to be an overwhelming consensus. One of them that we talk about all the time is being physically active, and that there's like no real thing that you can do to um to sort of replace that. Just being physically active, whether that means, I don't know, whatever you're into, like, just doing brisk walks or lifting weights. Strength training seems to be particularly good, not just for your body but for your brain as you age. And then there's one thing that is even, I think, um, stands above that very clearly, and it's having strong social relationships, which I think is super
Yeah,
interesting. That was something that was even more predictive of, like a slow decline as you age, and I think also, uh, at least sort of an explanation for why men don't live as long as women do. A lot of old men that like don't really have friends. I couldn't tell you how many people I talk to, and they'll be like, "Yeah, like my dad, he doesn't really have friends. He doesn't talk to anybody. He just kind of, watches TV, whatever, watches sports, but he doesn't have a lot of friends." That's never really true for women as they age. Women are like always better, I feel like, friendships, and like you, I would consider you to be one of my best friends. What
yeah,
about
same
me?
here, man.
Oh,
Same
okay,
here.
cool.
Say all that to say, we besties or no?
Oh,
No, man. Like,
and but we
yeah,
don't talk. We don't like FaceTime every day. We talk a lot. A lot of times it's about, like work stuff or stuff with the podcast. We won't talk every day. And I was talking to one of my friends. There's a woman that's one of my friends the other day, and she was saying like, yeah, like my good friends, my best friends, like we FaceTime like every day. Like they talk every day, and
you trying
I'm
to
like,
FaceTime me
damn.
more, man? Is that what you're
Hey,
getting at?
bro, I'm just saying, bro. Do you want to live a maximum lifestyle? Do you want
Yeah,
to be
man. I
healthy
guess,
at the end
yeah,
of
we
your
got to
life or
max this
not?
thing out. Yeah, I mean, I think it's really interesting because I also think there's like certain internalized social incentives that women kind of create for each other in friendship, like from a very young age. Like I don't know, like I was having a good conversation actually. This was with Moya actually, who we want to have on our show. She's an astrophysicist.
Mm,
She had it was like just in passing, she had I think she had made like a like bread from a starter. Like, that was like a big thing people were doing during the
Yeah.
pandemic. And she sent the like a picture of the bread to this friend group that she has, like all her girlfriends. And she's like, "Yeah, I made this bread from a starter, guys." And everyone's like, "Oh my God, that's so awesome. Like, great." And I'm like, I'm like imagining a group chat full of dudes. And it's like, "Yo, bro, I made this bread from a starter." And everyone's kind of like, just
They're gonna
ignores
start making
you.
fun of
Like,
you. They're gonna start roasting you.
yeah, it's like, okay. Yeah,
This
so
fake
but I
ass
mean,
Martha Stewart looking ass.
right. I think it's I mean, it's a small example.
Yeah,
But I think, it just kind of goes to show how we don't really create the same social incentives to just like casually interact with each other the way that I think a lot of times women do better. And obviously this is purely anecdotal.
sure,
But
sure.
yeah, I think when you think
I
of
think
the suicidality of men, that's something another big podcaster, Prof G's talking about a lot, right? That 80% of suicide deaths in the US are from men. It's a jarring statistic. It goes to show that there's a lot of mental health concerns that, again, I'm not trying to make this a whole men versus women thing. I don't want to step in the ring with that. But just the idea that, there are things that as men, I know a majority of our listeners are men as well, but based
mhm,
on what we know,
yeah,
that, we can be doing to better incentivize social interaction, especially, I mean, for the curiosity people like us, that there's certain types of conversations that we want to have, and I feel like this is a great way to cultivate that environment.
I agree. I agree. I think also probably sort of like working against the grain. You can imagine that the individualistic society that we imagine, everybody kind of wants to like, I don't know, like get a bag and like secure a bunch of stuff for yourself. It's a very individualist way of thinking, and it's sort of like a winner take all thing. Like it's like a do or die thing. And
Hmm.
from that perspective, where I think that historically men have faced that more head on, because just for example, 100 years ago women couldn't have bank accounts, right? So like women's survival, it literally was forming a social connection, be that to a man, be that to like other women, whatever. And they I think there's been like this long history of conditioning or maybe acceptance or allowing for women to be much more social. Whereas for a man, although I would argue that it's every bit as important for us to be social, that there is like this longer history of that not really mattering. And the only thing that really mattered was like, can you like be successful, whatever, get money and have all these things. And so now I think that that's one of the is like some sort of the after effects where there's not like we haven't got a lot of societal messaging that men should like be better friends or that we should like connect more with people or anything like that. So it's definitely a problem, and that you see, when you look at like the suicide statistics, for me that's like a symptom of something that's going wrong. And you
Yeah,
look at like the age of average lifespan for a man is several years shorter in the US at least
yeah.
than women.
Yeah, and I just quick fact check on what you said. I think the Equal Credit Opportunity Act prohibited discrimination based on sex or marital status in 1974, so making it illegal for banks to deny credit or accounts without a male cosigner. So women could set up accounts without a male cosigner as like as recently as 1974 is when they were first able to do it.
Yeah, so not
Um,
even 100 years ago. Like
yeah,
that's crazy, man. We're talking about what is that? That's like 50, 60, 70 years ago.
yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I something I saw this clip from Diary of a CEO with Stephen Bartlett, I think is the
Hmm.
interviewer's name, and he had a guy on. I forget the guy's name. He looks South Asian. I think his name. I think maybe they call him Dr. K or something like that. And I don't remember exactly what he said, but he like suggested this idea. Well, I thought it was kind of interesting, from like a diagnostic standpoint, that that what we're seeing going on right now with like a lot with like men and women and women sort of like having rights and being able to control their lives and make their own money and that sort of thing, it like changes the landscape for what it looks like for relationships, because now a woman doesn't have to have a man. And it's like for men, it's actually much easier to date and to marry when women literally need a man or they can't survive.
Yeah.
But if they can survive on their own, that changes things, right? Because
Hmm.
they're no longer desperate for a guy. And so like maybe that like raises the bar way up. Like it's not enough that you just have a full-time job, right? Like
Yeah.
maybe, well, you know, it's going to depend woman to woman. Maybe somebody wants somebody who does this thing or does that thing, or, you know, has these characteristics. And so they can kind of like, yeah, they're not like, I guess they're not desperate. I mean, that,
Yeah.
and that changes things. And
100%.
he was saying that this is like a shift, right? You could think about a like a selection pressure shift where for men that, you know, don't check any of whatever those new boxes are, they just won't, they just like won't find somebody to date or marry or whatever the case is. And he was framing it from a perspective of evolution, which I thought was interesting. And it's, you know, again, like from a diagnostic perspective, I think that it's incredibly interesting when you realize that it's like, oh well, you know, it can seem like harsh, right? But that is what always happens, right? Like that's what happens in nature. In nature, you know, when the male of the species and the female of the species, the females maybe select certain males, and the males that they don't select, they're just they're just kind of like eliminated. And that's why you get like giraffes with the long ass necks, right? Or
Yeah.
why you get a hippo that is hyper aggressive and huge and built like a tank. And thinking about that from like the social perspective, of weeding, and the thing to remember in evolution is there's no such thing as good and bad, right? Like we can put those moral value judgments, but there's no such thing as good or bad, right? It's like what what reproduces, what doesn't,
Reproducing
what
what doesn't.
survives, what
Yeah.
doesn't, what fits in this environment, what doesn't. And like the traits and characteristics that have helped men survive for maybe the past 1,000 years or whatever. Maybe it is like being emotionally unavailable, being able to just focus on making a living and not needing to give a shit about connecting with the opposite sex or your family or whatever. And for a while, you know, for a while that sort of was selected for, but now maybe it's not. And people, you know, in nature, if you can't adapt to the new environment, if you can't become fit, then you go extinct. That's what happens. That's how
Yeah.
evolution works. And I just thought it was an interesting way to think about it.
So yeah, man. Another thing I wanted to actually talk about was this cool article. It was an interesting article, rather. It's this bombshell article that casts doubt on microplastics and whether
What is
or
a
not the.
bombshell article?
I guess I guess that's great marketing language, right? I
Yeah,
guess
it sounds
this
like clickbait to
article,
me.
it says a bombshell doubt cast on discovery of microplastics throughout human body. So
So
some
a little bit
scientists are
of
saying, "Oh, go ahead."
mhm. Oh no, I was just gonna do a little overview, but go ahead, finish what you were saying.
Yeah, some scientists are saying that detections are likely an error, and like there's a high profile study that has come out about this that I think is often cited that people are calling a joke. So it's
Okay, so there's like for a long time we've known that the plastics, well, for a long time we didn't know. They just made what's kind of like we were talking about earlier. In the US, we do shit, and then if it gets bad, if the effects get bad enough, then we say like, "Oh, we shouldn't have been doing this for
wait
the
a minute.
past 80 years," right? Now apply that to plastics. We found out that plastic was a thing that could exist, and we just started, you know, it's industrial revolution. You could sort of wrap everything in plastic. You could make utensils from plastic. You could make plates from plastic. You can make basically anything. You can make clothes from plastic. Great. Well, it turns out that actually this plastic breaks down, but it doesn't really degrade, right? It's not biodegradable. Like, you know, you imagine if you had a shirt that was made from the wool of a sheep, uh, you know, in a 10,000 years, that thing will have degraded. I think, not 100%, but the plastic won't, right? Like the polyester in your clothes will not, and that's a problem because it just breaks down smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, which means that it just gets in everything. It's in the oceans, it's in the water, and it gets inside of our bodies. And you may think that that would be horrible because our bodies shouldn't have these fake made up microplastics in them. But all of the studies so far, although a lot of them confirmed insane levels of microplastics, like in the testicles, in the brain, in your bloodstream, in your lungs, there is not any clear link to negative health consequences. And the important thing there is not that it's not bad to have plastics inside your body. It's that we haven't been able to prove a causal link that it causes some negative health outcomes. And it seems like what they're doing in this paper is actually looking at the detection methods and saying that they're wrong, or that they're insufficient for even detecting the correct amount of nanoplastics, which we apparently don't have the ability to detect. And this is alarming because when the studies start coming out and it's like it's not clear that there's something bad going on, then more people want to research it, right? We want to figure this out. I suspect what'll happen is that within the next decade or two, we'll realize that this is horrible. This is like, lead. I wouldn't even be surprised if it's leading to like the cognitive decline and rise of intellectualism in the United States. Uh, but but
Funny.
it's like a very hard thing to prove, and apparently, it's very hard to even detect these nanoplastics. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to cite what was said by the study's senior author. Um, I'm convinced we detected microplastics, she said, but I've always said that the amount estimated could be maybe twice lower or 10 times higher, which is like, what? So
Yeah.
what do you know conclusively then?
So then what do we know? What do we know if we can't even get our, wrap our heads around the amount? It's crazy. So here they talk about later that there was a study that was claiming to have detected 10,000 nanoplastic particles per liter of bottled water. Uh, but that it's that like whatever method that they use for this detection is, they quote, saying fundamentally unreliable. Obviously, we're consuming plastics. I mean, I drink sparkling water out of a
Oh,
plastic
look, I
bottle
got a
every day. I'm
plastic bottle right here.
probably we're just funneling these nanoplastics into our bodies, but the amount, I don't know.
Yeah,
It doesn't seem like it's even clear that we're using the correct detection methods.
yeah,
And I think that they were specific in saying that, this isn't a shot, which it always seems like, right? When something comes out and it's like, oh, we've been wrong about this thing for the past decade, everybody's like, yep, scientists are dumbasses. They don't know anything. They're using the wrong methods. But you just use the methods that you have. And it's possible, it seems like, this is good critical analysis, that the methods that we've been using are not sufficient to make precise claims on the amount of plastics inside the body. And so it's like, can you even begin to talk about the health effects when you have no idea of the actual amount inside of a body? And I would say no. If not, if
yeah.
those two things are related.
Which I'd argue is a temporary victory for big plastic because they're able to
Oh
delay
yeah,
the inevitable when we
they're
find out how
salivating.
bad. Yeah, exactly. Because now they can give even more plastic to people over the years. One of the other things that we talked about in the show before is this idea, this concept, biomagnification, where essentially the smaller organisms at lower trophic levels or lower on the
Mhm,
food chain consume something like microplastic, and it increases in concentration as organisms eat that organism. An organism eats that one, an organism eats that one. And
mhm,
we can imagine that a lot of the food that we're eating, where we have all these plastic contaminants that have gone into the ocean, is being biomagnified before it even goes onto our plate and gets consumed by us. So I feel like there's just
mhm.
plastic coming into us in so many different directions, so many different ways. Uh,
Yeah.
But yeah,
Let
we
me
can't say anything conclusive about the health effects yet.
yeah, let me see what there's a quote that I want to read in here that says specifically what they're challenging.
So the method that these papers have historically been using to detect these microplastics is called PYGCMS, and it's pyrolysis gas chromatography mass spectrometry. It's this analytical technique that rapidly heats samples to decompose them and allows for identification and quantification of components in complex materials like polymers, plastics, oils, without having to prepare a sample. So it sounds like yeah, it heats things up and it causes them to maybe break down in the same way
Yeah,
that perhaps denaturing works in biological samples. And then you
yeah,
can identify the quantity of the polymers that exist that make up those materials. So, what plastic is composed of are these things called polymers. It's these long chains of molecules that strung together. And there's different types of chemical structures, different types of plastic particles. But essentially, if you heat these up, they'll decompose and break apart, and you can kind of quantify how much of this stuff is plastic that's in this
mhm,
material. So,
yeah. So like part of the reason that sounds like part of the reason that you aren't supposed to be reheating plastic. Like you have you may keep your food in like a
mm,
plastic Tupperware and you
hmm
heat it up and what you cause like on the edges, right? You don't destroy the entire like utensil, but you will cause like some of this stuff to break apart and get into your food and then you consume it, and that must happen every single time that you put plastic in the microwave. So
I mean, I'd
here it is.
argue. Well, just a quick aside on that. I'd argue.
Mhm.
I wonder if if you put hot food in Tupperware, right? Does that happen
Same
in
thing,
that
right?
case too? Yeah.
Same thing, right? Because you're it's like a contact, it's warming up by contact. Yeah, man, it's kind of scary to think about. Well, that's the thing. We don't know if it's scary yet to think about because we don't know what the negative health consequences, if any, are, the long-term effects. Um, which I thought was interesting because even the studies so far, like the let's say that it is completely uncertain the actual amount of micro and or nanoplastics in each one of us. You still would expect after multiple generations, which is what we now have of Americans consuming stuff that is touching plastic always. Probably most of the things that we consume have come into contact with plastic at some point, maybe that's not true, but you would expect that after a couple generations, if there are extreme negative health effects or noticeable ones, you would expect that we would have some evidence for that now. And again, because we don't have clear evidence or nobody has been able to pinpoint the clear evidence, doesn't mean that it's not awful for us.
Mhm.
But I do think that it is interesting that there isn't any clear sign of that. When we used lead gasoline, there's like clear signs of what lead poisoning does when lead is in paint. There's clear signs of what it does to, for example, kids who would like lick or play with these lead paint toys.
Mhm.
Because lead kind of mimics something and gets stuck in your brain and then never leaves and then causes some neural issues. And yeah, just I don't know what that means that we haven't obviously found those negative health effects yet. But here they say, the authors, that they think that it's a problem basically with the field. Uh, that the number of total
Mhm.
plastics that are being reported are just they're just totally unrealistic, and that
Mhm.
it's not really a dig at anybody, right? It's just like a critical analysis. They use the techniques that they have because there are no better techniques. Those techniques haven't been evolved yet because maybe they didn't think that they needed to. And this is a way to, this is science. It's like this is a way to quantify that what we were doing is actually not as good as we thought, and that we need to come up with better techniques for something that's really important, like the health of every human being on Earth. I'm pretty sure everybody on Earth has these plastics inside of them now. So
Yeah, and
super,
probably most
super
animals
interesting.
too. Yeah,
Yeah, and probably most animals.
yeah. Sheesh, fascinating stuff. Okay. Last little quick one that I want to talk about. Another bombshell article for everybody, since we
Yeah, whatever.
love to talk about these. We recently were going through our analytics, and we found out that 80% of you all listen to us on an iPhone. So I'm curious as to, for the audience members that are listening to this on iPhones, are you all super down for Apple? Are you riding hard for Apple? Do you think you're better than Android users? Because
Nobody
this is an interesting.
cares. That's the as an Apple user, I can tell you that nobody cares. The only people who care are people who have Androids. This
I
is a
don't
fake
know.
rivalry. It's a fake rivalry that you've made up inside of your own head. And you like every day, it's like, yeah, like y'all think that y'all are so much. And it's like, no, nobody thinks about it. We just
Well,
enjoy seamless interfaces,
you
seamless
know,
connectivity between devices.
I'd
It's
love to
annoying
I'd
to
love
listen
to
to y'all,
believe
actually. That's the
I'd love
worst
to
part.
believe that all Apple product users are benign, benevolent beings, but I did see a
Benign.
tweet. Yeah, benign and benevolent. But I did see a Threads post recently that talked about this woman who said she'd never date a guy if she sent a text and it was a green bubble. Or in fact, no, she hit it off with a guy. Then he sent her a follow-up text and it was a green bubble, and she like threw the phone down. She's like, can't date this guy. Anyway, saying all that to say,
That's pretty
there
lame.
was
I'll
a
give you that.
yeah, that's pretty lame. There was an article that this isn't just an article. This is a big news story. So Google announced a partnership with Apple, where essentially they're going to allow Gemini, which is Google's large language model, that's kind of recently become groundbreaking, and there's always like this competition between the large language models. It's recently started beating out a lot of the other large language models. Gemini is actually going to be powering a revamped version of Siri in an upcoming version of iOS, which is the operating system of iPhones. And so, a lot of people might be complaining about like Siri not kind of catching up with the times in terms of having all these new AI ready features. Like if you really want to like have a good conversational AI tool, you'll probably just still talk to ChatGPT, or that a lot of people would. Um, but in this case, people are now not having the choice to pick between Apple and Google. They're using a Google product that will also be powering Androids to power their iPhones. So, I just think that that's pretty funny. But
Yeah, I bet the 20% of Android users that listen to our show will also think that this is interesting or funny or whatever, or clever or cute. And the 80% who don't think about this because they don't care, they just want good products, will not really care. And I don't think anybody uses Siri. Siri only sets alarms on my phone. Like I haven't found a
mm,
good use for Siri. And it's fine. Like I don't really care. Um, Siri's lame. Apple doesn't have good intelligence features. I don't think that. So I see why they
yeah,
just piggybacked on and to Google's and Gemini. That makes sense. I
yeah,
bet OpenAI is not happy about that.
I think so, because they also had an existing partnership with OpenAI where I think if Siri can't answer certain questions, I don't know if you've seen this before, but it's like Siri can't answer certain questions and they'll just link you to ChatGPT. I think that was the
Mm,
partnership that they had. What's going to
yeah.
happen to that partnership is kind of hard to ascertain at this point. But I also think, yeah, man, like it's an interesting strategy as well if you get really meta with it. If you're a big tech giant like Google or Apple, a lot of times people make this argument, and I think I've made it as well, that Apple isn't the innovator that Steve Jobs wanted it to be. Like,
Yeah,
remember
bro.
Apple's original.
Every day, bro. Every day I talk to you, you remind me of how shit Apple is.
Well, I don't think it's a bad company. I just think Steve Jobs, like his whole motto was think different, right? And it's like all these other computer companies are basic, and Apple, we're different, right? And I do think that they are different from everybody. I don't disagree with that. But this idea of them being an innovator as a big tech giant doesn't just make as much sense, because they can be a lot more liable. Like, for example, if you're a lean startup with a small team, you can innovate products and make cool features without the liability of like, oh snap, my product just caused a car crash or some bad thing to happen, and now this huge lawsuit happened. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But if you're Apple, you have a lot more to lose with being that innovative. So a lot of times, what these big tech companies will do is they'll sit around and wait. There's two things they'll do. They'll sit around and wait for a big a startup to kind of overcome a certain threshold of success and risk, and then they'll buy out the startup, right? They'll swallow that startup up into their ecosystem, or they'll own a certain fraction of the startup so that they avoid liability but still have access to the things that they want, which is what happened with Microsoft and OpenAI, where they kind of own like 40 to 50% of the company. Um, so yeah, it kind of always is a little case by case, but I think that's also an interesting reason why a lot of these big tech giants aren't as well positioned to keep up in this revolutionary AI ecosystem where everything's moving so fast, because they have a lot of liability, they have a lot to lose, but they can just hang back and then buy whoever does the thing right, you know?
Yeah, if I had to take a stab at what happened here, it was that Apple figured out that Gemini is better suited and less risky moving forward, and OpenAI isn't, and so they just went with Gemini. That seems
That's an
like
interesting take.
that seems like pretty clearly what happened to me. If OpenAI was head over heals better. And because it's like they get all this money, and then there's like these questions about the amount of money that it seems like OpenAI is going to be able to make, and the amount of money that they're asking for. And it's like Google has just been established for so much longer, and there's already like people talking about Gemini being a better tool overall. Google obviously is a better business model. It's literally Google, right?
Yeah.
So um anything that they needed to absorb, it's Google. It's like one of the biggest companies that's ever existed on earth. And it just seemed like a safer bet if you're going to go somewhere, and you don't need to like waste your time and thought energy and like trying to develop something that's just as good. That's kind of what it seems like to me. And I guess
Yeah.
like in that, it's like, yeah, obviously the
Yeah.
Gemini is dope.
How quickly this ChatGPT has become unsafe, right? Just in late 2022, they were this first mover, this pioneer. Their
Yeah.
valuation swelled up. Sam Altman became a billionaire in the process.
Hmm.
And what's also, I think, really interesting is that there's been this new partnership on behalf of on OpenAI, where they're trying to, I think, work with one of these health tech companies to start getting biometric data from their users. I mean, you have all your users talking to ChatGPT, and using it, well, not all of them, but a lot of people using ChatGPT as a therapist. And now you're trying to get biometric data as well. I mean,
Yeah,
the
which
level
don't
of
do that. If you're
intimacy.
listening to this, don't use Chat GPT as a therapist. It's not
Yeah,
good.
ideally avoid that if you can.
Yeah.
Just go out there, try to find a friend. That's one of the things that we talked about
Find
a
a
little
real
earlier today.
therapist.
Yeah, find a real therapist if you can afford one. A lot of times, depending on your situation, you might not have free therapy. If you can afford one, try to find one, but also try to find a friend to talk to. It can be very therapeutic. I think our podcast, our conversations, man, I think are extremely therapeutic for me, because we can do the intellectual
Yeah,
deep
well, you
dives,
need
and I
it,
think.
man. You need it. I gotta I gotta decompress after talking to you.
Yeah, yeah, man. I know I can be pretty toxic, man. So I'm working on that though.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I
man.
agree, man. I think that's something that's come up a few times, is that the act of being curious to me feels like a release. It feels like something that um like scratches an itch, relieves a pressure valve. 100%. So totally agree with this. I know it probably feels good for you. It always feels good for you to air out any sort of negativity towards Apple. So probably gonna sleep like a baby tonight.
Super therapeutic, man. Oh man, yeah. Yeah. No, I'm gonna have a smile on my face for the rest of the day just being able to do that. But no, man, I'm not an Apple hater. I own Apple devices,
Bro,
you know
you
what I
are,
mean?
bro.
Nah,
You
man, if
are.
Apple wants to get behind us, you know what I mean? Well, they probably see a couple of these episodes and be like, I don't know, man. Maybe they'll get
Yeah,
behind us
I
because of
won't
you,
hold my
because of you
breath
though.
for the Apple sponsorship.
Well, cool, man. I think on that note, it's a good time for us to wrap things up. Thank you all so much for staying tapped in with us. If you are still there, still on the line with us, we're going to be building out our Patreon community. A lot more conversations coming up soon about what that's going to look like for you guys. We want to spend 2026 really leaning into our community, cultivating it, and making a dope experience to be a part of the Curiosity Theory group.
Curiosity Theory Group.
Yeah,
Um,
which will be called something else very soon. We actually have a name that we're working on. But on that note, I want you all to, as always, stay curious.
Peace.
Peace.